You want to get back on the break first?
Can you hold it for half an hour? It's half an hour. Are you going to be able to
You're going to do it right now, right?
Yeah, run it. Go ahead. Killer storm on the loose. Watch out. Watch out. Killer storm on the loose. Wait a second. This cover also has Under the Covers with Irma and Bill Bombeck. Scenes from a Loving Marriage. Haven't they been... They're like 150 years old, aren't they? Oh, no. This is from 1993. The year of the killer storms. Watch out. It's the year... It's the storm year to end all storm years until the next storm year to end all storm years.
No, it's
so
true.
Thank you, Life Magazine, for going crazy and making everybody afraid. That's how they do it. How do they do it? How do they make people afraid? How does Fox make people afraid?
Hate and fear.
Hate and fear. It's a great combination for people that want to frighten other people.
Speaking of Fox News, we were on the last show. We were talking. Could you please say what you said about Fox News? Wait, I don't want to take the show over, but you said you're an Iraq War veteran.
Right.
You came back from the war. You're sitting home. You're watching Fox News, and what happens?
I was sort of a reflexive Republican. I grew up. My father was a conservative. And, just
I
sort
grew
of
up Republican too.
Yeah. And I never really thought about it. I never gave. But I went to Iraq, and there were some things in Iraq that I didn't like, and I had exposure to some very high-level people based on the job that I was doing. I was the first advisor to the Iraqi Army. I built the first Iraqi Army unit trained by the U.S. military, and I had exposure to really high-level people, people that you read about, people who have written books about the Iraq War, and I saw them in action.
Guys sort of like Richard Bremer and Tom Foley?
Yes.
Level?
Yes.
Now, this was in 1990,
No,
right?
that was in 2004.
Oh, okay.
2004.
Second Iraq
Yes.
War.
Yes.
The invasion and occupation, which... Is it over yet? Kind of?
No, we have 3,000 Marines in Iraq right now who are engaged with ISIS.
Okay.
So I had high-level exposure to those people, and there's a lot of things that I saw that I sort of thought, wait, what the heck is going on here? This doesn't make sense. So when I came home, and I was wounded in Fallujah and all that kind of stuff, and I was wound up going to the hospital for 2 years, etc. But I'm watching Fox News because that's what I used to do, and everything that they said about Iraq was not true. And I said, wait a minute, this is... and I couldn't stand it. It was like making me crazy because it was everything, 100% of what they were saying about the Iraq War was a lie.
Pathological liars?
Yes, and well, actually, I wouldn't say pathological. What I really believe, and I believe this in my heart of hearts, is that the Iraq War was created to create a domestic political message for the Republican Party to the American people to help Karl Rove create what he called the permanent majority.
Karl Rove?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Can Ham on Jon Stewart's show.
And I absolutely believe that what they were saying on Fox News had no relation to what was going on the ground, but was rather a part of a narrative, a war narrative that was being promoted to create this political reality.
Were you able to see Paul Azan on CNN with their khaki beret on when shock and awe began?
No.
These guys were playing it up to the hilt. They were all so gung ho behind this marvelous invasion, which was going to be over. And I think Bush said 2 or 3 weeks. 2 or 3 weeks that the country will be ours. They'll be throwing flowers at us. They'll be Baba. It'll be Nirvana. A guy by the name of Benjamin Netanyahu who we talked about on Basil's show, because Benjamin Netanyahu spoke in front of the Republicans, at least in Congress, at the behest of John Boehner. He gave a speech. Well, I'll go back a little bit further. He gave a speech in 1996 where he said, "If you don't stop, if you don't disarm Iraq right this minute, immediately Iraq will have a nuclear weapon and all civilization will cease to exist." That was 1996. 2002, on the eve of the Iraq invasion and occupation, he said, if you invade Iraq and take out Saddam Hussein, the Middle East will be stable immediately. Everything will be fine in the Middle East. It'll all be peaches and cream going forward. He might have been a little wrong about that too. Now he's come back and he said to the Republicans in Congress, if you don't stop the Iranians from doing this nuclear thing, that if you don't stop them right now, by whatever means necessary, and that might include bombing of Iran, might mean a lot of bad things. If you don't do that right this minute, you're going to have that all hell will break loose tomorrow. Same thing he said 19 years ago. He wasn't right 19 years ago, not right now, and if he says it in another 19 years, thankfully he looks like he's going to get defeated in his own country. It might be the Republican president, but he's not going to be Israel's president because he's looking pretty bad in the polls.
Now, in 2004, I was in Italy at this time. That's when Bush was reelected. So do you think Fox News created all this, you're saying, to help Bush get reelected?
Oh, I think they colluded with President Bush to get reelected. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I think that was basically the communications arm of the Republican Party in 2004. I was in Iraq for most of 2004, but one of the things that really rubbed me the wrong way, well, two things. But they could not, they told us they couldn't get us absentee ballots for us to vote, even though they got us all kinds of other things. They had, fast food, Burger Kings and Taco Bells and everything else on the bases. They got all kinds of stuff, but they told us they couldn't get us ballots, absentee ballots to vote.
How do you think the veterans that were there doing their third or fourth
tour of duty,
tour of duty, that they might not have been so supportive of President George W. Bush in the election?
Well, that's when it was dawning on us that there were no weapons of mass destruction. It was all
that's
when
lie.
People started to figure it out that the WMD were not there. So I absolutely believe that was done on purpose. Now the other thing is that in all the dining facilities in Iraq, they always have Fox News on the big jumbotron TV.
No kidding.
On Armed Forces Radio and Television Network, they always have Fox News on. Fox News and Rush Limbaugh.
Wow.
Always.
Oh.
That's what
being
I'm
subsidized by the Department of Defense. Department of Defense pays Fox News and Rush Limbaugh to be on their network. Taxpayer money.
Oh my goodness. Wow. And absentee ballots, that's a right as a citizen to be able to vote.
Yeah, of course.
And who do you write to? The president? To complain I'm not... Oh, wow, that's...
First, you've got to go through your commanding officer who might not be so sympathetic to your complaint.
When you mentioned weapons of mass destruction, I was really sold on the idea that they had them. And I remember, like a few years after the war, and the time's escaping me now because I can't remember the dates, precisely, but I always thought that they were going to find the weapons of mass destruction. And a couple of years later, I remember hearing some news that they found them, and I said, good, they found them, so it wasn't all a farce. And that turned out to be a farce. But I was under the impression, for some reason, that if we were going to start another war, we were going to get free oil, or we were going to get the benefit
that was one of
cheap oil.
And during the Bush administration, as it turned out, when he took office, gas was $1.20 a gallon.
Right.
By September of 2005, when he had been in office.
Yeah, it was like $4.
It was $4.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It had tripled
Ridiculous.
in 4 years.
Is that right?
Yeah.
It had tripled in 4.5 years.
Ridiculous.
So the gas, the oil baron president,
Right.
who was going to get us, cheap gas, took us exactly the opposite direction.
See, I always believed that was engineered. Just like Ken Lay from Enron was on President Bush's and Vice President Cheney's Energy Advisory Council.
Look up Enron and see what happened with them. They were taking energy, they were taking electricity and reselling it to themselves through shell corporations, selling it, reselling it.
To raise up, to bid up the price.
Every time they raised the price of it, there's a little profit each step along the way. It was always them selling it and buying it.
Right.
And then they'd sell it to California, and they'd sell it for a huge price, make a huge profit.
Right.
And then the mistake they made was they built this company which basically did nothing except shuffle paper.
What was it called?
Enron.
Okay.
They had a baseball stadium named after them. The Houston Astrodome became the Enron Field. And when Enron finally collapsed and the shell game came undone, they lost their marketing gem, and the Astrodome became Tropicana Field. Because I guess Tropicana is a little more innocuous name than the oil company and the electric company that screws all of America.
So I am convinced now that the whole point of the Iraq War was, one, to increase the price of energy, to basically make gigantic profits for the oil companies and the electricity, but also to create a domestic political narrative that would put the Republicans in power permanently. I think those were the two objectives of the Iraq War.
Wow.
Well, Rumsfeld, remember Rumsfeld?
Right.
When speaking to the point of the weapons of mass destruction, they finally backed him into a corner. The media started to get a little bit. They grew a set of balls. And they started asking him, well, where, it's been a year, it's been 2 years, where are those weapons of mass destruction? And Rumsfeld's glib answer was, well, they're north, south, west, and east of Baghdad. He didn't know where they were, but he just knew they were there somewhere.
Yeah.
Rumsfeld had been the one who engineered the sale of and transfer of chemical weapons to Saddam Hussein in the 80s.
The famous picture of him shaking hands with Saddam.
Right, to use against the Iranians. And one of the things that I was surprised by is that, and I met senior guys in Iraq who were working for Bremer, who told me that they had been advisors on the ground during the Iraq War. The Iraq-Iran War in the 1980s, and I had no idea that we had advisors on the ground in Iraq. So we absolutely knew the whole thing, the whole narrative, what had happened. But one of the things that drove me crazy, and I want to talk about, is where I was especially, we had to get generators to create electricity for our buildings, for training, for but I was like, we're in a desert country. It rains 5 days a year. How come we don't have solar panels? And it was ridiculous. It was.
Yeah.
And I'm, working on my book, and I talk about the electricity production, because we needed electricity in, where we were in order to, accomplish our mission. And we had these two guys, they were Iraqis, who basically had a giant generator from GE. And they lived in basically a lake of oil, and they were raised. We got pallets for them to raise them up, and they slept there with the generator, out under the stars. But it's so ridiculous. I mean, we're in a desert country. It rains 5 days a year there, but we won't use solar cells or solar panels to create electricity. That it's dumb. It's moronic.
Well, dumb, but sort of calculated in a way.
And I've seen Abu Dhabi on my show. Once again, we showed Masdar City. And what they're doing is, now here you've got the richest people in the world with the most oil trying to build a sustainable city. And why? Because they understand the future is not in fossil fuel.
Right.
It's in sunshine.
Yep.
And,
Saudis are heavily invested in it also, because they have enough sense to know that oil is pretty much going the way of the dinosaur relatively quick.
Here's an interesting fact, which I'll be disclosing on my show tonight. So everybody tune in. Oh, that's right.
This doesn't show till this is not going to be on until Thursday noon 30. So Sorry, but you're on the web though, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
You're on the web where?
On Who's Telling the Truth, and there's 85 shows so far. Tonight will be the 86. But the one thing that we're going to announce tonight is that for 2014 was the first year where we didn't create more carbon. We didn't. I'm sorry. No, let me say this properly now. The amount of carbon that we put in the air in 2014 was equal to the amount that we put in 2013. So we didn't put more carbon in the air than we did the previous year.
So the trend is starting to hopefully.
Well, it's starting to level off. But the better news is the actual production, world production, increased 3%. So we actually produced more by putting the same amount of carbon in the air, which means that we're starting to go in the right direction.
And that's why the price of oil went down quite a bit. It pretty much collapsed.
The price of oil, and it's going to get to the point where the Koch brothers are going to understand that the Alberta tar sands oil is going to be too expensive for them.
Right.
Even if we had the XL pipeline
The extra
built.
one. Well, we've got a couple of them, but this is an extra.
Right, but the thing is, none of the pipelines cross the border, and that's the problem, because they want to make the one pipeline that crosses the border, and that's where all the tension is. But the thing is, what's happening now is it costs like 30% more to refine the tar sands oil than it does the regular oil.
It's crappy oil. It's
well,
poor quality.
And the thing is, once they have to ship it down to Texas, because the only places that can refine that crap are in Texas. And then after they refine it in Texas, it's easy to ship to different countries in the world. So the Koch brothers will try, but now it's getting to the point where when the price of oil, the price of a barrel of oil, is under $50 a barrel.
Right.
It hasn't been this low in like 6 years or 7 years.
Right.
So the thing is, what's starting to happen is some of the oil rigs are starting to close down.
Yeah.
They can't afford to run them anymore.
Exactly.
And why? Because wind, solar, and so many of the things that we've seen, like from the cylinders, and anybody that watches Fox News, you've heard the word cylinder mentioned over
the
and
one
over.
company we invested in
that went bankrupt.
The only one.
It's one that, no, there's a few others that went bankrupt.
But so many success stories, though.
Exactly. What happened is that that $30 billion portfolio that the Obama administration established, only 1% of that portfolio has gone bad, which is pretty damn good.
In the world of capitalism, that's called a win.
Well, exactly, because the thing is, when you're using new technologies that you're not sure what's going to work, what works and what doesn't work, and it's like anything else, like when they were building the Hoover Dam. There was a lot of different changes that they had to go through. Hey, wait a minute, this ain't gonna work.
It was a new kind of stuff, and they had it, and that's why you had when oil was a new thing, a new form of energy. We had what was called an oil depletion allowance, which unfortunately still exists.
It does,
and it really shouldn't. It still gets paid out to the oil companies. It was put in place to encourage oil companies to invest some money, explore.
That's when they actually had to physically go out and drill, and they could lose money.
Exactly. That's when the government had to encourage investment in a new industry. Well, now obviously oil is not a new industry. Exxon makes $35 billion a year in profit, and there's no need for there to be that oil depletion allowance anymore, but there still is. But nothing for the solar industry.
Now, you just brought up a really interesting point about government investing in these new technologies and new companies. So there's starting to be scholarship about exploring the state's role in creating and fostering entrepreneurship and new technologies. So there's a really good book that just got published by Maria Mazzucato, who's from the London School of Economics, and it's called The Entrepreneurial State. And it talks about how the state, the polity, the entity, the government is, the one organization that is really able to explore, invest in research and development of radical technologies without fear of failure.
Governments can afford to invest money, whereas individuals really don't have that power.
And
you mentioned that in the first show, but go ahead.
Venture capitalism is all about quick return on investment, for maximum return on investment. You talked about capitalism is max return to shareholders. So what happens is, the government is a shareholder, but it can afford to take that loss. And people, especially conservatives, complain, well, where is my tax money going to, et cetera.
Right.
But the scholarship now is starting to show that taxpayer dollars put into investing in new technologies and new entrepreneurial opportunities create much more value, 10 times more value for the taxpayer. So for every taxpayer dollar that goes into one of these programs, you'll get significant return on investment overall for the entire nation. And that's starting to turn the conversation away from this idea that the government has no role in entrepreneurship.
But look at what Tim Cook, the CEO from Apple, said just last week. He's told his shareholders, he said, look, if you're looking for return on investment, look elsewhere. Because what we're worried about sustainability. We're doing this for the children of the company, for everybody that comes behind us.
Yeah.
And look, Apple's the biggest corporation in the world. I mean, they just keep and finally, everybody's starting to get the idea. Hey, wait a minute. If Apple is going to put their eggs in one basket, and if they're so sure that everything is so positive, guess what? I'm going to follow them, because that's the new business model.
It is a good model.
To get more with less.
Right.
And it's all starting to come to fruition. And from people like Elon Musk, you look at the gigafactory that they're building in Reno, Nevada. And if you watched my show, you'd know. And it's going to employ...
Who's telling the truth?
Rich Frascone.
Monday nights, almost always Monday nights at 7 a.m. live.
7 p.m.
7 p.m. live. Monday night, 7 p.m.
And Sunday.
Live. And Sunday at what time? 10
o'clock.
p.m.?
No, 10 o'clock in the morning.
10 o'clock a.m.
Oh, that's right. It's right on. It's on right before Basil Buddha Cat presents. Exclamation point at 11 a.m. So go ahead.
Yeah, but the battery factory is going to employ 6,500 people at a living wage job, $25 an hour, plus benefits.
The battery factory? Where's
the battery
this?
factory. This is in Reno, Nevada.
Oh,
It's being built right now.
Oh.
All right. Now, not only will it employ 6,500.
With benefits at a living wage.
There you go.
Yes.
But Tesla has already invested $35 million into the Reno, Nevada school system.
Wow.
So that the children will get an education.
Good
because
one. And come work at Tesla.
You can't have dummies working in these factories.
Yeah, they want people to come work at Tesla that live in Reno.
Right.
Exactly. And also, the other thing, now you've created 6,500 good living wage jobs. Those people need to buy pizza. They need to have their hair done. They need to have their cars washed. They need their lawn. So you create up to 16,000 additional jobs.
Right.
You know, this is a really, and you brought up something very interesting about investing in education. So there's definitely a movement, especially among conservatives, to divest in the public education system, and we're seeing that here locally in
They never
Connecticut
liked
as well.
it to begin with.
Right. So, at a time when our children need to have the skills to work in a global knowledge industry, conservatives are saying, let's divest from the school system. Let's not we won't let the federal government or the state tell us how to educate our children, and we'll self-educate or we'll homeschool our children in basically the manner that
charter schools,
So
homeschooling.
no Common Core, you're saying.
Now we do have someone here whose sister homeschools her kids, but she does a good job of it. It's not a propagandistic kind of homeschooling.
That's what you see, especially with religious fundamentalists, is that they want to school their children so that they're not exposed to
evolution.
Right.
Oh.
Just remember, evolution begins with evil. Just remember that.
No.
You're going to teach my kid?
I think a lot of people are going against this Common Core. I know a woman who teaches in Common Core, and she's just saying it's,
I really think
horrible.
that we don't do a good enough job of teaching what STEM, science, technology,
like healthcare,
engineering, math. And I think entrepreneurship. I think that those are skills that kids need to have.
Of course,
I gotta jump
agree.
in. I gotta jump in
Yeah,
here because I was a teacher.
100%.
I am a teacher. I taught in a school, came back to Connecticut from Florida, raised my kids. That was my teaching after that. But in principle, I'm against Common Core. But if you put Common Core in comparison to No Child Left Behind, No Child Left Behind was a top-down, federally mandated thing where they told the schools in every state exactly what to teach.
Right.
Common Core is very
Republican, by the way.
George W. Bush, thank you, Department of
No
Education.
Child Left Behind, right?
Yeah, Common Core is very different. I don't like it either. But in comparison, Common Core is bottom up. Every state writes their own curriculum. The federal government doesn't tell anybody what to include in the curriculum. It's all state operated. It's more localized than No Child Left Behind. Don't like it anyway, but make the comparison.
But if you
Common Core is much better than No Child Left Behind.
If you look at what's going on, and I don't know this much about this, so I'm gonna. But the one thing I do know about is, like in Wisconsin, what they've done is they've given tax breaks to the richest 1%.
Yes.
Okay? And in order to give them the tax breaks, where did they get the money from?
From the school system. Absolutely.
From the school system.
So take it
So
from the
now
kids.
the University of Wisconsin is going to be shafted, I think, by like 30%.
$300 million. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How much?
$300 million cut to the University of Wisconsin.
So that the rich people can have more money, so that the rest of the people can get more stupid.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And they won't know how bad they're getting fleeced, right?
Don't these guys want stupidity? Doesn't stupidity get their stupid minions watching stupid Fox Network and getting propagandized and become stupider, which works to their benefit.
And not becoming entrepreneurial.
We're going to keep talking, but while the show winds down, so you might not catch a little bit of our conversation at the end, but we're going to keep on talking. Listen if you want. Right.
How do we know how much time we have left?
Keep on talking.
We have like a minute.
30 seconds.
Yeah,
keep on
30
talking.
seconds.
Keep on talking.
No, but isn't the same thing happening in Connecticut? I heard.
It's happening in Brookfield. That's exactly what
WestCon. I heard
what the Republican Party in Brookfield is doing. They took all the money out of the public education system and gave a tax break to the developer at Four Corners. That's the play. That's the play that they reproduce everywhere in the country. It's a play out of their Republican textbook. That and that is what Republican voters vote for.
Bye. Thanks for joining us.